morning, everyone. We're going to be back in Matthew 4, and we're going to continue studying the Beatitudes this morning. We're in Matthew 5, 4. The second line of the Beatitudes. So last week we talked about, blessed are the poor in spirit. So basically a quick recap of last week was we learned that without understanding the sacrifice that Jesus Christ made for us on the cross, we can't have any appreciation of what it's going to be like one day when we're going to spend time with him in heaven and in his Father's house. So today we're going to be looking at, blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. So each beatitude, the first one leads into the second one. So first we have to realize that we're poor in spirit before we can have any level of mourning. So it's a paradoxical saying. So it kind of is the opposite of what it says. So basically it says, happy are the sad. So the New Testament uses 9 words for mourning. So Christ uses the strongest of them all. So the one that he's using is actually the one used to mourn the death of a loved one. So it's a present participle, which means to continually mourn. So as Christians, we are to be continually mourning the sin in our lives. So last week we talked about this too. We should be moving forward in the direction that we're walking. We shouldn't be standing still. We should be continuing to go in a forward direction in examining our lives. So what type of mourning is Christ referring to? The first thing that he's looking at is mourning over personal sin. So when we're born again, you should see changes in our lives. We shouldn't be the same person that we were before. You should begin to see like micro changes in the way that we make our decisions and in the way that we do things. So God is fully invested in the holiness of his children. I really like that line. I thought that was a good definition of what we're looking at. He's fully invested in the holiness of his children. So in Psalm 32, 3 through 5, it says this. And this is David speaking here. It says, when I refused to confess my sin, my whole body wasted away, while I groaned in pain all day long. For day and night you tormented me. You tried to destroy me in the intense heat of summer. Selah. Then I confessed my sin. I no longer covered up my wrongdoing. I said, I will confess my rebellious acts to the Lord, and then you forgave my sin. So if you look at this, when we keep in our hearts the things that we know are wrong, the sins that we know that we should be asking for forgiveness for, we're not going to have any personal peace. But when we take those things that we know we need to take to the Lord, he offers us that grace and mercy. So he knows we're going to continue coming to him our entire walk as a Christian. No matter what we do, we're going to continue bringing our list of things that we could have done better each day. There's always going to be something on it. And I feel like the closer we get to God, sometimes the longer the list goes. Because we start to examine the things we're doing and we're like, oh, that actually is a sin too. Like that dirty look that I gave to someone, that's a sin too. Like you start to really get introspective when you look at the things that you do on a daily basis. So it says if our relationship hasn't changed with sin, it's likely our eternal destiny hasn't changed. So that's kind of a real eye-opener when you think about it. So if we aren't making any changes in our life, but we claim that we're a Christian, we're probably not on the right path. We're probably not on our way to an eternal destiny with Jesus Christ. Right. We need to look at our lives and go, what is it that I can do to have a more Christ God-centered life. Because if he's not in the center of our decisions, what is? Who is? Are we in the center? Are our children in the center? Like, who's in the center of our decisions if it's not Christ? Because we can love those things dearly, but if he's not in the center of our decisions, we're not going to have that contentment and that peace. So the other thing is so we're going to mourn our personal sins, but we also are going to mourn the sins of others. So this is where it comes into corporate prayer, where it's important that we get together, just like we did before we started, to have our Sunday school lesson. And we pray for the needs of the church, of the community, and just all the needs that are brought to us. We get together and we pray for other people. And it's not just other people's sins. We're praying for situations. It's anything that we need to ask the Lord for in prayer. Because it is more powerful when we all come together and ask the Lord for something and we're all in agreement that, hey, this is what we need to have happen here, Lord. We want you to hear us. We're sitting in your house and we want you to hear us. There is just something kind of special about when you're praying in church compared to when you're praying at home. You know, even if you're standing by your seat, praying quietly, like I'm not always one to pray out loud. Sometimes I can't hear my own voice when I'm praying out loud and other people are praying. But there is some kind of power in the house of God when you're praying here and you're asking for him to intervene. So, in what ways does God comfort the mourner? So, through salvation. You cannot be forgiven if you're not sorry for your sins. I know that sounds kind of like redundant. Like, yes, obviously I can't be forgiven if I'm not sorry. But how many times do we say we're sorry? Like, think of little kids. Think of when you have two kids fighting. I'm sorry. Certainly sounds like you're sorry. Like, you're sorry that I heard you. You're sorry that I saw you. But I don't know if you're sorry about how you acted to your brother or sister. I don't know if you're actually sorry. No, probably not. Like, I'm going to actually work on trying not to get caught next time, Mom. I'm going to make sure she doesn't cry this time. But I think we do the same thing to God. Like, I'm sorry that you caught me doing that. I'm sorry that you know my heart so well that you know what I did and what I said. And I'm sitting here going, I guess I'm sorry. But we do that. We do that. Yeah, that is how we act, though. We're like, well, I guess. Since you know everything anyway, I guess I'm sorry. But he knows the difference between I guess I'm sorry and I'm actually repenting. I still can't wrap my head around that, Dan. The idea that the man knows me better than I'll ever know myself, that's just crazy. But in the same point, it's kind of a blessing because he's like, that's just Shelly. She needs a minute. She'll be back. She's going to come back. Right. Like, he knows what we're going to do. Just like you said, before we even do it. He knows how many times we're going to be not sorry before we finally go to him and go, yes, Lord, I do need forgiveness for that. It does. I can take everything back to that verse, though, because it's my favorite. So there's not much I couldn't take back to fearfully and wonderfully made. Right. Right. Again, I can't imagine. Right. Right. It's such an amazing gift that he sought to give us before we were even formed in our mother's womb. Like, he knew what we were going to do. Right, and I depend on that, let me tell you. Grace and mercy renews each morning. I said that last week, and thank God for that. Some days I need more heaping teaspoons than others. So in 1 John 1:9, it says this, "But if we confess our sins, he is faithful and righteous, forgiving us our sins and cleansing us from all unrighteousness. And when he forgives and cleanses us, we experience his comfort, joy, and intimacy. We experience God's blessing." So when we go to him with an open heart, he's going to give us this level of contentment that nobody else can. You cannot give it to yourself. Your husband, your dad, your children, nobody else can give you that same level of content as the Lord can. So if we really want to be content, we have to be willing to give those things to the Lord. Right. No. But thank God that he did. Thank God that he was willing. Right. Right. So the other way that he comforts us is through his word. So this is pretty much an answer to every question that there ever was, is read the word, study the word, research the word, look at it, and figure out how you can spend time in the word when you're not at church. How many people don't ever open their Bible when they're not at church? And it is a hard habit. It's crazy how certain good habits are so hard to form. Right. So you're exactly right. If we don't have spiritual nutrition, we're going to starve spiritually. Proverbs. One thing I really like about the Psalms is if I'm trying to spend time with the Lord, how easy is it to just open the Bible and read a psalm? 5 minutes. Read a psalm. Like, spend a little bit of time and you're like, okay. And like, I have a couple of numbers in my head. Like, I have a couple favorites that I can go, oh yeah, I do like that one. Like, I want to just read that one. And one of the things I do sometimes when I spend time in the Word is I like to copy down my favorites. So I'll write down my favorite things from the Bible. And there is like, it's almost like when you read them over and over again, they get different meaning and more meaning, and they get a little more meat to them where you're like, yes, I didn't see that before. That word right there changes things just a little bit. And you get a little more meaning from it. So the other way that God comforts us through, comforts the mourners, is through the ministry of other believers. So when we're together, we're going to be stronger no matter what we do. As a group of believers, we're going to be stronger when we're together. So how do we grow in spiritual mourning? So what do we do? So one thing that I wanted to say is in James 4:8 through 10, God also commanded compromising Christians to mourn. Draw near to God, and he will draw near to you. Cleanse your hands, you sinners, and make your hands pure, you double-minded. Grieve, mourn, and weep. Turn your laughter into mourning, and your joy into despair. Humble yourselves before the Lord, and he will exalt you. This is such a meaningful passage where it shows us that we cannot be double-minded. We cannot be hypocrites. We have to go to God with our best. That's not saying that we're going to be perfect all the time, because again, we're not. We're still sinners at the end of the day that have to go to Christ and ask for forgiveness every day. And it says this, it says, if we can be tempted to laugh at sin, it will lead to first acceptance, then participation. And like, how many times do we look at some action and you're like, well, that's unacceptable. But then you see somebody else doing it. Then you see somebody else doing it. Then there's another person doing it, and you're like, is it unacceptable? Like, there's a lot of people doing it if it's unacceptable. It makes you think. You have to sit there and look it up. Well, let me see if it's unacceptable. Let me make sure I still remember correctly. Because it is tempting when you see other people doing these things. And you're like, well, that's not right. And we have to look at our own lives, too, and go, well, I used to do that, or I did that before, but that doesn't mean it was right. Just because I did it doesn't mean it was right. Just because me and 25 other people were doing it still doesn't mean it was right. So we have to really be willing to understand that. And I thought that sentence was one of the most powerful ones that I read. And that, again, that's if we can be tempted to laugh, it will lead to acceptance, then participation. And how quick can you just go down that rabbit hole and go from one thing to the other? Absolutely not, no. Right. Right. And I think sometimes that's a hard thing for people to wrap their heads around, especially new believers. When you're just getting to know Christ, it can be hard to look at all people doing these things and you're like, well, what is right? And that's where it does come into play, that you have to be able to open your Bible. You have to be able to look and see, well, what is right? What does the Lord say is right? Because if we don't know that answer, public opinion can sway our answer if we don't know where to find the answer. Right, it's definitely hard to figure out how to respond to situations appropriately with dealing with the injustice in a way that honors Christ. And that is something that as a Christian we have to understand and try to find the right answer to do. So we have to turn away from sin and make sure we don't lose sensitivity to it. I think that says it all. We cannot lose sensitivity to sin, because then it becomes that much easier to participate in it. So again, we have to be studying God's word and confessing our lack of mourning and praying for God's grace. Because how easy is it to just go on and do the same things we do every day and not ask God for forgiveness and not sit down at the end of the day and be like, oh, well, I did my best, Lord. Okay, well, did you do your best? Did you give it your all? Because there's days when we can be honest and go, you know what, Lord, I did not give it my best today. I didn't even try to give it my best today. So, we do have to have an honest evaluation of ourselves. We can't just be happy with mediocre. We can't just be happy with just getting by, just sliding by, just enough to almost get into the door of heaven. We have to really put a little more effort in. And that's everybody. That's me too. I have days where I know I could do a whole lot better. And then I keep going through the motions. And like I just said, one bad decision led me to the next one, and then it led me to the next one, and then it was bedtime. And there were no more decisions to be made. But it's easy to do that. It's easy to let one moment define your entire day. It's easy to let one single thing either ruin your day completely or make it the best day. And those small decisions add up. And then we decide how we're going to make the following decision. So we have to make sure we're keeping Christ in the center of our decision. So then the next one. So first, we realize we're poor in spirit. Then we need to mourn. Now it's blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. So the world says that it's proud, tough, and aggressive to inherit the earth. Basically a survival of the fittest type of mentality. However, the Bible does not agree. So the first beatitude, so you recognize your sin, and then, so that's poverty in spirit. Then it leads to mourning, so that's our emotional response, which leads to meekness. So meek is such an interesting word. So we actually have no word in the English that is suitable. So I love looking at the meaning of words and seeing like what captures it. So it's actually from the Greek word "prouds." It's probably being said wrong, and it was used of a soothing medicine, a soft breeze, and the way that you trained an animal, like a horse, the way you break a horse in and get it to follow your commands and do the things you want it to do. And so it's typically translated as meek, humble, or gentle. So, again, Christ is saying the meek, so the gentle, the humble, that's who's going to inherit the earth. So the meek are self-controlled or divinely controlled. I would say of the fruits of the Spirit, if I had to pick one that was maybe the hardest to achieve, it's being self-controlled. That is being able to respond to people appropriately, regardless of the situation. And we are often tested with that one because it's just life. We have people in our lives, we have variables in our life. We can't guarantee what someone's going to say to us, what someone's going to do to us. We can't guarantee how we're going to react when our children like spill a cup of dirty paint water all over the table, all down the edges. Like that was part of my week. Like we don't know like what your first reaction is going to be. Is it going to be to grab a towel and clean it up and be like, oh, accidents happen? Or is your temper just going to flare up from the earth and be like, why would you do that? How did that happen? So it's like getting a handle on the way that you react to things. And sometimes it's easy. Oh, yeah, sometimes. We do practice that one at my house sometimes. There's a flare up, then a clean up. Yeah, we do that one. And like sometimes you look back at yourself and you're like, I don't even know why I got so mad over that. I'm not sure what in the world. Like, I don't know how this thing of water being spilled sent me into such a rage. Like I don't even understand. I'm not sure what I was mad about. Sure. Right. Right. Yeah. Right. Right. I was reading this week, and they were talking about what is the tone of your heart. So what is your tone? Like on a normal day, when you wake up, what is your tone? Like, are you happy? Are you calm? Are you frustrated? Are you angry? Are you irritated? Like, what tone do you bring? And that's like just as you wake up. Like, what's your mood? What tone So the first thing is figuring out what tone you wake up with. And the second one is why. So why do you wake up angry? Why do you wake up frustrated? Why do you wake up not content? Like, what is the reason for the tone that we wake up with? And that has a lot to do with if we are self-controlled or divinely controlled. Because how are we going to be self-controlled when we're constantly irritated or we're constantly angry? So God teaches us how to respond to things through both trials and blessings. So he's watching through everything he gives us. He is watching how we respond. Again, I will say this forever. Don't pray for patience, because he will give you endless opportunities to practice. Endless opportunities to practice having patience. And that's a hard one to master. So, but the point of that is these are opportunities for us to fully trust him and fully obey him. Because we need to trust him when things are going good, and we need to trust him when things are going bad. We need to have a continuous state of trust in the Lord. So the meek are gentle in response to personal offense. That's a hard one. So when someone offends us, and we live in a culture of everybody is offended about everything, we are to be gentle in response. We are not to publicize it. We are not to take revenge upon that person. We are to be gentle. So think about the times when somebody upsets you. Are you gentle in response? Do you go to that person, or do you talk about that person with someone else? So again, that's a very hard thing to do. You know, when you are offended and you feel like someone has done something to you, it's a hard task to take it to that person and be like, hey, you know, you actually hurt my feelings when you said that. Or you, whatever, fill in the blank. This is how you made me feel. And we have to understand, too, when someone brings an offense to us and we made them feel some kind of way, we might not have been trying to. We may not have been trying to make them feel that way, but we have to accept that sometimes, regardless of our intentions, people are all designed differently, and we all feel things differently. And if we want something changed, we need to go to that person. If you take it to anybody else, you're not getting any changes, you're not getting anything. You're just getting the temporary satisfaction of, in the moment, somebody's going, yeah, I can see why you'd be offended at that. I'd be offended too. Great. But it's not a long-lasting satisfaction. It's not going to bring you any contentment to your heart until you actually go to the person and see if you can fix it. Because we are called to try to fix it with the person it happened with. So, again, this doesn't mean that a person cannot fight back. It's that they will not. They will not fight back with you. They're going to try to look for a solution rather than a way to fight. It's being sad over their sin. It's wanting them to come to the Lord. Yeah. It's one of the most interesting things about the Beatitudes and my personal study of them is they each lead to the other, like one to the next to the next, and then like they also relate the first and the fifth, the second and the sixth, and you're like, it's just all comes together. Right. Where that self-control comes in. Until you can control yourself, you can't really deal with anybody else in the manner that God calls us to deal with others. So the meek are righteously angry at injustice toward others and dishonor towards God. So William Barclay wrote this. He translated the word meek as blessed are those who are always angry at the right time and never angry at the wrong time. He said, if we ask what the right time and the wrong time are, we may say as a general rule for life that it is never right to be angry for any insult or injury done to ourselves. That is something that no Christian must ever resent, but that it is often right to be angry at injuries done to other people. Selfish anger is always a sin. Selfless anger can be one of the great moral dynamics of the world. I love that. Like, just think to yourself, blessed are those who are always angry at the right time and never angry at the wrong time. Whew. Yeah, Lord help me. I thought that was just such a powerful explanation of what that means, how to control our emotions. So the meek are humble before God and others. They seek the interests of God and others over their own. Seek the interests of God and others over their own selfish. That's a hard one. How easy is it to not seek the interests of others? How easy is it to leave God completely out of your decision? I'm just going to do this. It makes me happy. That's what I'm going to do. That's easy. When you keep Christ in it, it's a little more, it makes that decision a little more powerful. A little more goes into it. But a lot more comes out of it. No place in the life of a Christian. So that's definitely something that's on my list to work on. Right. Think of what our lives would be like. How content would we be if we didn't take offense to personal, Like, we didn't get mad every time we felt that something had been done wrong to us. But then we took that anger and we turned it around and we looked at the injustice that's being done to others. Like, how much could we show the world what Christians care about and how much we care about them if we were more upset when something happened to somebody else than we were when it happened to us? You would be. You would be in control of yourself. And that is just such a powerful thing, to be able to keep control of your emotions. Well, right, that's what self-controlled, or it says divinely controlled. So if God is the center of our lives, then he's in the driver's seat. He's leading us where we need to go. I was thinking the other day, I was driving somewhere, and all my kids went to sleep in the car. So how many times do we say the Lord's Prayer? So most people know the Lord's Prayer, and we do say, thy will be done. Not my will, but thy will be done. Okay, so how many people are willing to get in the car with God, let him get in the driver's seat, and you're going to close your eyes, and you're going to turn off your GPS, and you're going to be like, yes, Lord, I'm ready to go wherever you want to take me. As a matter of fact, I trust you so much. I'm going to close my eyes on the way there, because I trust you that much. I know that you know where we're going. And I was asking myself that in the car, would I be willing to let the Lord just drive my car? Would I just sit there like this with my head back to the side and my sippy cup and just ready to let him take the wheel? I want to. It definitely gives you perspective when you think about, I do think that's a big reason we have children. They give us such a perspective on how to have a relationship with the Lord. When you see the way that your children love you so effortlessly, how they come to you for everything, especially small children. There's no love quite like the love of a toddler. They're happy to tell you when they need everything. Right. I'm going to let you drive, and we're going to see where we go. Yeah, that's true. So why is it necessary to be meek? It provides a proof of salvation. We're not meek, we're not saved. Necessary as an act of obedience. It's necessary to receive and understand God's word. So you can read the Bible all day long. You can read it like it's a piece of literature, like you're reading Romeo and Juliet, and you'll get nothing out of it. So until you seek to actually read it and understand it, not like it's just some book on your shelf that you open up twice a week, but as a guidebook. This isn't just a book. This is a guidebook on how to live your life. So until we treat it with the respect that it's due, we're not going to understand what it says. So in James 1:21, it says, therefore, put away all filthiness and rampant wickedness, and receive with meekness the implanted word, which is able to save your soul. James just gets right down to it. Just here it is, friends. Put away filthiness and wickedness. And receive with meekness, that's gentleness and humbleness, the implanted word. I love that he says implanted, which is able to save your soul. So we have to put the word in our heart if we want to be able to do anything with it. And the more that you read the Bible, the more you'll be able to remember the Bible. Or where something's at or part of it, you will remember it more and more and more. So if we don't want to do God's will, we won't be able to truly understand God's word. So we have to want to do it. If we don't want to do it, He's not going to help us understand it. He knows the posture of your heart. He knows how you're coming to Him. He knows if your prayers are sincere and if you really want to change or not. He knows. It's not a secret. So He's not going to transform the Bible for you if you don't want the Bible transformed. It will be a mess of words you don't understand until you ask Him with sincerity of your heart to make it more, to make it a guidebook for your soul. So it's also necessary to properly teach Scripture. So we're all of us, we're all called to teach others about the Bible. That is what the Great Commission is. We are all called to teach somebody, somewhere, our knowledge of the Bible, every one of us. In 1 Peter 3:15 it says, "But in your hearts revere Christ as Lord. Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope that you have. But do this with gentleness and respect." Gentleness and respect. So we have to be willing to answer the questions that people have about our walk with Christ. And our answer should make people want to walk with Christ too. They should be like, I really want what you have. I really want to walk with Christ too. I want to have that feeling in my heart of contentment. But if we're not showing any contentment in our heart, how will they know? How will they know we're a Christian? So without gentleness, we will harm people with God's word. We will argue, fight, and push people away. So we have to look for our windows of opportunity. How do we show someone our hope in Christ and draw them to our hope in Christ without making it almost a competition? Almost like, oh, I won. I got that person over to Christ. I did my duty, and it only took 2 mean sentences. Told them they were going right to hell if they didn't get on board. Well, don't think that has ever drawn anyone to Christ. I don't think that has ever made anyone go, you know what, I'm going to start going to church on Sundays now that you put it that way. But that is what people do. That is what people say. They do it. So we have to look at what we're saying. Is it actually, is it drawing someone to you? Is it making them want to be part of what you have? Is there an opportunity in that conversation where you could plant a seed, then you can water the seed, then you can come back and see if it's sprouting, then maybe it'll turn into a tree, and then maybe they'll be like, you know what, I would like to go where that person goes, and I would like to spend some time where that person spends some time, and like to study the Bible with that person. We have to plant the seed. We can't get a tree without a seed. So to grow in meekness, we must ask God for it. Again, we have a sin nature. It's not going to come natural to us to be meek. It's not going to come natural to us to not be like, me first. I want to be in the center. I want this to be all about me. That doesn't come natural. We have to ask Christ for that. So we must yoke ourselves to Christ in discipleship. We must grow in faith. So what does it mean to inherit the earth? The meek will inherit the earth at Christ's coming. So paradise is going to be ruled by the meek. We're going to be co-heirs with Christ. So presently, the meek inherit the earth in a sense that they are not owned by their possessions. So you're not owned by the things that you own. So exactly. What would the purpose be? That's exactly it. it's really interesting to think about, what are we going to do when we are co-heirs with Christ? Like, how do you even think about what that's going to be like? So we will rule the world with Christ when that time comes. We'll be co-heirs. So presently, again, we're not owned by our possessions. The last thing I'm going to read is by Kent Hughes, and he says this. He said, there is a present inheritance that abundantly enriches our earthly existence. There is a sense in which those who set their minds on riches never possess anything. This was given classic expression by one of the world's wealthiest men when asked, how much is enough money? Just a little bit more, he said. He owned everything, yet he possessed nothing. It is the meek who own the earth now, for when their life is free from the tyranny of just a little more, when a gentle spirit caresses their approach to their rights, then they possess everything. Next week, we're going to be looking at verse 6. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness,